Hello and welcome once again to Let's Start Cooking. I'm Wayne, and if you've ever had a chance to go to the Caribbean or you've been there, then you know there's two things that they really talk about, and that's rum punch and a rum cake. So today we're actually going to make a rum cake. So the first thing we're going to want to start out with is we're going to take all our dry ingredients. We sifted our flour, and we're just going to take that and we're going to add our dry ingredients together. Mix this up a little bit so we don't have just one piece of salt or something in per bite. So we're just going to put all this together, and I'll have all the ingredients listed again in the description, but we're just going to mix this up just a little bit. And once we get this mixed up, like I said, we're not going nuts with it, we just want to do it a little bit. We're going to take our sugar, which is 2 cups of sugar. We took a stick of butter, and this is unsalted, and this is 8 tablespoons. And we did soften it because we want to cream this up together. So we did soften this up. And we want 1/2 cup of our vegetable oil. And we're just going to take that . We're just going to start this out on low till we get this all pretty mixed up. And we're going to run this on medium to medium high for about 5 minutes because we want to get this nice and fluffy and really whipped up. Once we get it all mixed up to where we know we're not going to get sugar all over, we're going to let this run for about 5 minutes like this. Once we get it to a consistency of almost whipped cream, we're gonna just scrape down, make sure that we don't have anything on the beater. And as you can see, it's really, like I said, like whipped cream. And that's what you want. You want a nice, fluffy mixture. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna scrape the sides down, and we're gonna add our eggs one at a time, and we're gonna slowly beat them in. So we're going to keep this on low, and we're just going to add in 1 egg at a time, just so they mix all up before we go putting them all in. Because basically, what we're making is basically a vanilla cake, but we're going to add something special to it, and we're going to go from a normal vanilla cake to really good rum cake. And once we get this mixed in and we know all the eggs are mixed in, we're going to start to add our flour and our other dry ingredients. And we're going to actually alternate between the dry and the buttermilk and the rum. We're going to start with flour and we're going to end with the flour. But in between that, we're going to add the rum and the buttermilk. Next, we're going to add our vanilla. And now what we want to do is we're going to add our flour little by little, just a little bit, mix it up, and we're going to alternate between this, our buttermilk, and our rum. And this is about the time you're going to want to preheat your oven to 325 degrees because this is going to bake for a good 65 to 70 minutes at that low temperature. So now we want to keep this on low, and all we want to do is just mix this. We don't want to overmix this. So we're going to add in just a little bit of the buttermilk. And we're going to add in a little bit of our rum. I'm using a spiced rum. You could use any rum you want it. You could even use a coconut rum if you want to. And when you're all done, you can sprinkle a little coconut. But all we're going to do is just going to add a little bit of this. we're going to add a little bit more flour. And again, we don't want to run this on high. We just want to mix this up. I want to block the camera, but unfortunately it stopped at that point. And we're only doing this because we don't want to add all this together at one shot and end up with lumps. We're trying to keep this as smooth as we can. So we'll get this mixed up just on low, and then we'll finish adding in the rest of this. Get this mixed up a little bit. We'll add the rest of our flour. We'll let this mix just for a couple seconds more, just to make sure everything's combined. And then we're going to put this into a sprayed. Now I would say butter and flour your pan, but we're using a bundt pan. So you want to make sure you get all the nooks and crannies of that bundt pan. That's why I suggest using spray, because non-stick spray is going to guarantee this is not going to stick before it comes out. Because the last thing you want to do is take all that time and then end up having it stick, and you can't get your cake out of your pan. So we'll just mix this up one last time. Scrape down the sides, and we'll get our bundt pan ready. Okay, we scrape down the sides, make sure that everything's mixed up, and with these bowls, make sure you get to the bottom, because sometimes it doesn't get all the way to the bottom. And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna start filling our pan. And again, I just made sure that I really sprayed this very well, because the last thing you want is to take all this time and realize that you can't get this cake out of this pan. I'm just going to go all the way around. And if you're worried about the alcohol, ethanol or alcohol boils off at about 175, 178 degrees. So since we're baking this at 325 degrees, we're not really worried about the alcohol that's going to be in the cake, because it's basically, we're just doing it for the taste of the rum. We're not doing it for the alcohol itself. So we're just going to get all the sides. I'm going to try to smooth this out the best we can. And one thing we don't want is, we don't want any bubbles. So we want to try to get, if there's any air bubbles in here, we want to try to get them out. All right, we're going to bake this 325 degrees for about 65 to 70 minutes, depending again on your oven. We're going to test this with a toothpick to make sure it's done, and we will see you in about an hour. Okay, it's been about 65 minutes. We've just taken it out of the oven, and what we're going to do now is we're going to let this cool for about 15 minutes before we try to take this out of the pan. But in the meantime, as this is cooling, we're going to start on our glaze. So we'll set this aside, and we'll get our glaze going. First thing we're going to start with is we're going to start with our butter, and we're just going to put this in, and we're going to let this melt down. And again, I'm going to have all the ingredients in the description. This is pretty simple, about as simple as hitting the button and subscribing, liking and sharing this video. We'll get this melted down, and once this melts down, what we're going to do is we're going to add all the rest of the ingredients all at once. We don't have to add them in order. We're just going to put all this together, and we're going to bring this to a boil. And we're gonna let this boil, and we're gonna stir this for about 5 minutes. So we'll get the butter melted down. Let me show you. And we're just gonna add the sugar. We're gonna mix this up. And then like I said, we're just gonna add everything together. Let this all get melted down. Shut it off. And we're just gonna add our rum. And again, with rum, it's gonna boil up like this because you're boiling off the alcohol. And we're just gonna add a pinch of salt. And we're gonna add heavy whipping cream. And now what we wanna do is we're just gonna keep mixing this together. Bring it to a slow boil. And we're gonna do this for about 5 minutes. So you're gonna get to boiling like this. And we just reduce the heat a little bit. We don't want it to boil over, but we wanted to do that because we want this to thicken up. Okay, we stirred this for about 5 minutes. Like I said, we had a slow boil the whole time. We did stir pretty regularly because we don't want this to stick to the bottom of the pan. So all we're gonna do now is we're gonna take this and put it in a heat-safe dish, and we're gonna let this cool all the way. So we're just gonna take it off, and be careful because basically you made a caramel sauce. So if this gets on you, it's like melted plastic. It don't come off easy. And we're just gonna take that and we're just gonna dump it right in. And we're gonna let this cool. And when that's cooling off, we'll get our cake ready and we're gonna flip our cake out. And we're gonna let that cool off completely before we combine these two together. And we're just gonna set this plate on top. And this is where you hope everything came out good. I'm gonna flip it over. Fingers under it, it's still hot. And there we go. Now we're gonna leave this cool completely. And while this cools, we're gonna let our glaze cool because we don't want them hot. If you pour them on when they're hot, it's gonna be real sticky and it's gonna stay that way. So we don't wanna let that happen. So we'll let these cool off and we'll be right back. Now that they're both cooled off, we're just gonna take our glaze and we're just gonna slowly drizzle it across the top and let it run down. And we're not gonna use all of this because I like to leave a little bit so when you serve this, you can also serve a little bit of the glaze. So we're just gonna take it and we're just gonna let it drizzle down through. And then I like to take a brush and just kind of make sure we cover a little bit of it. Try to get this all over. Gives it a nice shine. And also you get this nice glaze and you get a nice bite every time you take a piece of cake. And you can dip your brush in it if you want. And we're just going to coat it. Alright. Anyway, anything you have left over, you can always put it in a small dish. And if you serve this cake to friends, family, you can always bring this out and let them, if they want to add more to it, they can. But that's about it. And this is your Caribbean rum cake with a rum glaze. We're going to let this set up a little bit and we'll get a nice slice cut out of this. Alright, let's see if we can get a nice little slice of this. We'll just take a small one today. Nice and light. You can smell, not the alcohol, but you can actually smell the rum. Talking about melt in the mouth. Now, you could take this and you could have used coconut rum, and when you had this wet, you could have sprinkled coconut over it. You could do, there's a lot of things you can do with the different flavors. I used a spice rum. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like and share and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a lot and it helps us grow. So until next week, have a great day.